It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you as always. Just good to be back in the Furman Garner Performance Studio here at KUAF. As excited as I am, I'd been out of the country for a while, and I finally got back on the podcasting groove, and so I'm really excited about today's episode. I had a chance to meet this individual, our next guest, at I want to think it was 1 Million Cups Bentonville event a couple of months ago that I spoke at. And he and I made a connection then. And I said, man, at some point in time, I want to try to get you on the podcast to talk about what you're doing. And he's just been making things happen. Every time I look up on LinkedIn, there's a new post about something that he's doing to create awareness around his company, Renewed Robotics. And that individual is Daizhan Ennals, and Daizhan is the CEO and founder of Renewed Robotics, a very, very interesting company. And I'll suffice it to say this. He has a quote, which I said, man, those are big words, but the fact that he put that quote out there, I'm going to repeat it. He said, Renewed Robotics will do to housing what Apple did to the phone. And I was like, wow. That's a mic drop moment right there. And I said, I got to have this guy on the podcast to talk about his plans and what he's doing. And Daizhan really represents part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we have here in Northwest Arkansas and really what is possible. And so I thought you would be encouraged by listening to his story. I think you will enjoy what he has to share. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Daizhan Ennals, CEO and founder of Renewed Robotics, to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for having me. That was an awesome introduction. I'm doing much better now, so thank you for that.
It's all good, man. I tell you, I'll take good care of you. It's definitely not a problem. Man, I'm excited to have this conversation. I would love for you just to give our audience a little introduction about who Daizhan is and also just a quick commercial for Renewed Robotics.
Okay, yeah. So I am originally from Maryland. I'm from a small town in Maryland called Cambridge, and my journey started there, actually. I was kind of a MacGyver, if you will. I had to definitely innovate my way to making sure I could thrive in my community. And then after that, I studied mechanical engineering. My aspirations towards engineering really began, I think, when I saw my first rocket launch. I was like, that seems like the coolest thing that humans are working on right now. And if I can devote my time and energy towards that, I probably can't lead myself astray. And so throughout high school, I then got into computer-aided drafting and design in our vocational school. And I got my first job at a company called Lane Engineering. I did a lot of civil engineering work and land surveying, things like that. And I decided from that point I could either, apply to go to NASA, work at Boeing, something like that, or, kind of challenge myself and see some more of the world while I was young. And so I took on the challenge of becoming a United States Marine. I served in the Marine Corps for 5 years. I became a sergeant as I was a helicopter mechanic. While I was in the Marine Corps, I became a CDI, and now I'm transitioning out of the Marine Corps. I then became a mechanical engineer. I studied that in Portland first and then transitioned to the University of Arkansas. And I found that no matter where I was in my career, housing has always been really hard to access, whether it be affording electricity or getting clean water to your home or affording a home that is equitable for you and your family. And so it seemed like the coolest jobs weren't necessarily ones that fulfilled me in the way I needed. And so I thought of a way to make a home that could be available for everyone at any given time and not necessarily have to deal with the hassle that came with traditional housing setup. Once that vision came clear to me, the idea of a self-assembling and self-sustaining house, I immediately filed for the patent and then began Renewed Robotics. And I was like, this is going to be something that can truly influence the world and how we build homes. So,
yeah. And I've seen the video, and we'll link to it in the show notes that you guys have put together for the product. And is your patent complete now, or?
So we're currently still pending. We have applied for the patent, but as you probably know, the patenting process can take a little bit of a while. And we also want to make sure that it's secure as possible. There's definitely going to be people, once they see our product out into the world, want to mimic it anyway. And so we want to make sure that we have all of the adequate protections once we make exo-earth or pressurized versions or making different sized versions. We want to make sure that we have all of that intellectual property fully secure, but it is patent pending while we are bringing it to market.
Wow. That's impressive. I mean, it seems like all of your experiences from high school on, even before then, kind of informed what you were doing from the design phase, from just your overall experience. I would imagine that your time, the 5 years that you served in the Marine Corps, and by the way, thank you for your service, but that time that you spent in the Marine Corps probably informed you as well about, and you probably saw things if you traveled around the world, some of the challenges that people have, especially with housing. Can you speak just a little bit to how you hope to solve this problem with this item, with this product, in its simplest state, right? Given that, I think you mentioned when I heard you talk about it, and you've talked a few times, I think you were on Startup Junkie podcast. When we met at the 1 Million Cups, you talked a little bit about it, and you just kind of gave me the Cliff Note version of what you're trying to do. But in my mind's eye, I feel like you're trying to solve the problems of when natural disasters come up, that people lose their housing. First thing you can do is provide some temporary housing or even temp to permanent housing. Talk a little bit about that and just kind of how this really came to be when you were like, you know what, I can build this portable building structure that could serve the needs of somebody that's in real need.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't know if I can honestly put it much better myself than that. But yeah, it seems like a lot of my career accidentally led up to this moment where I realized that this device is an excellent form factor to fulfill this need if there is a tsunami, an earthquake, a hurricane, anything that is unforeseen. Not that we would want anything like this to happen to someone, but when we do have to reconstruct and provide housing and secure shelter for these people in these situations, and whether it even be housing insecurity for whatever reason, we want people to be able to have somewhere to stay. And traditionally, that has meant people having to pour a foundation and then set up a house brick by brick and then bring in electricity and water all separately. This is now the first time using a prefabricated and pre-manufactured home that we can set that device on any flat ground. It assembles autonomously or unfolds by itself and then is completely self-sustaining. So you don't need to bring in electricity. You don't need to bring in water. You don't need to set up an air conditioner. This all comes inside of this self-assembling municipality, or SAM for short.
Wow. I love that. And I love the name SAM, right? It sounds like something that self-assembling municipality. It's like, imagine if what you have now created was available during the Hurricane Katrina, right? When you think
That's the roughest thing, is hearing it every day and wishing that these were already in production.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I can only imagine that if more than anything else probably has to fuel you in terms of what you're trying to do with Renewed Robotics and how you want to get it off the ground. What has been for you in this short period of time that you've been doing Renewed Robotics, what has been the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome in order to kind of bring this to fruition with? And we can set aside the whole patent piece, right? That's something separate, right? Mm-hmm. You have a great idea, you want to bring it to market, and at the same time, you want to protect your ideation and your invention, and you want to make it something that is replicatable, right? That people can see it and say, oh, here's the patent, here's the design specs. We can, license this and then go build it, right? Because you're not going to be able to do it for the whole world, but you'll be able to set something up eventually where people will be able, somebody in Turkey or somebody in Afghanistan or fill in the blank, any other country will be able to take your patent and be able to build on it.
Yeah, so we're actually planning on manufacturing these for all of planet Earth. Ideally, if there's an earthquake anywhere on the sphere that we call Earth, we would like to be able to deploy a Renewed Robotics SAM there, whether it be Japan or Australia or Turkey or Morocco, and eventually also extending this patent to even when we have to setting up facilities off of our planet, so making pressurized versions for exoplanetary exploration. We would like Renewed Robotics to be intimately involved in all of that.
So you're ready for the moon.
We're building right now for Earth, but we're using all the knowledge we're accumulating and making it secure enough for Earth so that we can go outside of our little sphere as well. Yeah, for sure.
All right. I love that. Well, listen, man, you can't blame a brother for dreaming, right? For what you can put together. And I think sometimes some of the greatest inventions started with a dream.
Yeah, thank you. And so I can circle back as well. So some of the difficulties as well when it comes to bringing a product like this to market, there's a lot of large hills to climb when it comes to bringing such a revolutionary idea to market for the first time. There's a lot of people who are buying the SAM, but in separate components already, just how people used to buy a cell phone and a camera and an MP3 player and a computer all separately. Yeah. And then Apple made the first smartphone. People are buying a home and then getting solar panels and a battery bank and then water filters. But we're the first people to ever make this into one device. And so it's hard to convince people that they're already buying it. They just need to get it in this form factor. And that's what's going to be what brings us into the future and executing on that. So then getting investors and getting my friends and fellow welders and Marines and veterans, everyone together so that we can then build these and have it all funded with grant applications and VC. So it's a lot of things to tackle, but we're doing it. So
yeah, I love that. And so are you finding that people are catching the vision pretty easily, or is there a learning curve there in terms of like fully realizing the benefits and, you know, just the virtue of having a SAM?
Yeah, I think there's a big mixed bag. So we have fortunately been able to reach a decent breadth of audience so far. And there's people who have like immediately caught on. They see where we are going and what's inevitable and how this plays a key role in that. And there are others who have much more traditional ways of thinking, and they see more so the challenges that we have to overcome, and that holds them off. And they want us to be making the iPhone 3 already and not necessarily helping us make the iPhone 1, if that makes sense. And so we have had people get on to what we're making, but it's hard to get everyone on board to a new idea so aggressively.
Yeah, because you got to crawl before you can walk. You've got to kind of start out with something that people can gravitate towards. Now, if I remember watching the video correctly, kind of describe to the listening audience the process that unfolds as this house comes to life, this device.
Yeah, so it's a lot to explain with words, but if you go to renewedrobotics.com, there is a video of this device. What basically happens is we drop off a rectangle, this large rectangular box on any property or flat ground that the buyer would have. And this flat box has small motors at the base of each corner to rotate a wall up into place. So as these walls are being rotated up into place, they form this tiny home or small shelter that has solar panels already equipped on the outside of it, as well as a water filtration unit and an air conditioner already built in. So instead of having 4 or 5 different companies come and set up a foundation and set up the structure, this self-assembling municipality can now secure its own foundation, erect its own walls, and then start generating its own electricity all by itself.
Wow. And then the water piece, how do you incorporate that? How do you, because I mean, it's almost like, well, you're not necessarily guaranteed to be able to tap into a well or anything like that, or a water supply. So how does that work?
Yeah, correct. So that's a great question, and thank you for asking. So the SAM is currently set up to be designed to filter rainwater as well as snow, but we have a growing list of a large amount of industry collaborators, including someone called Genesis Water Systems, and they're making these devices that can pull water out of the humidity in the air. And so they're collaborating with us. So even when there's humid days or when it's kind of damp outside, your SAM can then pull water out of the air for backup water. And so right now, like you're saying, start small. The SAM is an accessory dwelling unit. It's a tiny home. These aren't competing on the traditional housing market yet. But once we do scale up, we would like for these to be completely not relying on any type of external infrastructure.
Yeah.
But right now, the SAM can even be backed up with a pre-existing water system or support your existing home.
So I want to, and I appreciate you sharing that, I want to bring to the listeners' attention, there's a movie called The Martian. And there's a scene in The Martian when Matt Damon's character, who is stuck on Mars, has to figure out how to create and grow food. He happens to be a botanist. And one of the first things that he does is to figure out how to pull the moisture out of the air in order to grow the potatoes that he's growing in the Martian movie. And, you know, I was reading some articles about how scientifically accurate that movie was, because the book was phenomenal. But it just leads me to believe that, man, if that's possible, and then we certainly have the ability to do it here on Earth, and we have the capability to be able to pull that moist, because there's moisture everywhere you go. You just don't, harnessing it is a whole different
More
story.
scarce when you get out into space. There's like ice and stuff on Mars, but you have to process.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I'm saying all that to say is that, now that makes perfect sense that, no, you don't necessarily have to tap into a well to be able to generate and get water that you would need to survive, or for a variety of reasons. And I like the fact that you're talking about an ADU, which is an alternative dwelling unit. For those that have listened to the podcast, we've talked about placemaking here in Northwest Arkansas and elsewhere, and the importance of creating more livable spaces for people, right? Because we don't have enough homes. We don't have enough single family homes. We don't have enough homes for people even in Northwest Arkansas. And one of the biggest challenges to an area that's growing as fast as we are is how quickly can we spin up these homes that people can actually live in. And so talk a little bit about the size of this ADU that you're building, the SAM, and how big is it? And like how many people could actually physically live in it?
Yeah. So the SAM, again, as you said, it's an ADU, like an accessory dwelling unit, and they're about 200 square feet. So this isn't going to be like a luxurious, super large studio apartment that you're going to like spend the rest of your life in. This is going to be like a camping, glamping. If you have a mother-in-law or someone come visit, or again, if there's someone who's housing insecure and they need someone to get them off the streets, this would be ideal for that scenario. They're going to be about that size. And then we'd like to deploy these, like you're saying, everywhere that they're needed. So it'll be less infrastructure needed to set these devices up. And it'll be about big enough for a person or a couple of people to live in. Maybe after, again, something that would be devastating, like a natural disaster, earthquake, or tsunami, something that a small family can now live in and not have to share a community space where they have nowhere private to shower or store their goods.
Yeah. And so given that and how you just described and shared the perfect use case for it, is there a use case that like a builder might license your service to be able to put something out there that's maybe a little bit more robust in terms of size? Maybe there's a 400 square foot, because there is a such thing as a tiny home movement, right? And there are a lot of people that are building these tiny homes all over the country because they're minimalizing things and not having these huge homes, these 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, because a 5,000 square foot home, that's a lot to clean.
It is.
So, a 400 square foot home, yes, it is smaller, but you don't have to clean as much and you can spend time doing other things.
Like two of them side by side.
Yeah, exactly. So is it the kind of thing where you are, in your mind, you're hoping that will be multiple use cases and multiple sizes of these? Or is it you're going to start out with the one size, the 200 square foot model, and then ultimately build from there as the need arises?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's a lot packed in there, so I'll definitely try to get to all of it. So we do plan on initially making for our initial target audience the natural disaster housing insecure model that's going to be around 200 square feet. And then additionally, for the commercial buyer, anyone who's going to put this in their backyard for like a tiki bar or ADU, that one's going to be just over 200 square feet, and that's going to be for more like luxurious purposes. Back to what you were saying earlier about having to start small or crawl before you can walk, we would love to see the same be able to compete on the traditional housing market. And so instead of someone having to pay 4 different companies to come out and build your home and put up a roof and put on solar panels, you can order one SAM XL or the SAM 3, and it will be large enough to fulfill all your living needs. But that would likely be after we've eliminated housing insecurity on Earth. It'd be something that we're going to revolutionize housing insecurity the same way that everyone has a smartphone with internet. We would like for everyone to have someone to lay their head at night. And then we can get them the XL version that's a little bit bigger, and it can come with a Roomba and all that kind of stuff as well.
I like that. Yeah, you add the Roomba in there. That's cool. As I'm sitting here listening to you talk about this, I'm curious to know, how has AI informed your plans? And is it impacting your design process? Has AI made things a little bit easier for you to kind of theoretically come up with ways that you can make this, help get this program off the ground and get it to a place of general consensus that, hey, this is like the best idea going for housing?
Yeah, so maybe not in the sense that you would have assumed AI was extremely helpful, but throughout the design, iteration, and ideation process, I have been able to imagine the use cases for artificial intelligence with the SAM being used on a day-to-day basis, whether it be automatically pouring you a cup of water, or upon approaching the device, it can automatically unlock your doors without keys. AI has also been very beneficial when it comes to grant writing and grant applications. So a lot of the grant writing process is a little tedious. And so using artificial intelligence to generate a grant prompt can definitely save me as a business owner a lot of time. But when it comes to the design aspect, a lot of that is done with the traditional engineering noggin. I collaborate with a lot of my fellow mechanical, electrical, and mechatronic engineers.
Okay. Wow. So I'm curious to know, the 5 years that you spent in the Marine Corps, what was your biggest takeaway from that you've applied to Renewed Robotics?
Yeah. So there was a lot of experiences that I gained while serving in the United States Marine Corps, and I wouldn't want to take away from any of the great Marines that I served with that taught me so much. But I think one of the biggest standout key phrases that someone told me in the Marine Corps was to grow where you're planted. And it kind of stuck with me in a way that it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you get orders in the Marine Corps and you have to serve somewhere where that may have not been your first choice. And sometimes in life, you're brought to an area where that may not have been your first choice, but it's your choice if you are going to grow there, if you're going to let that area inhibit your growth, or if you're going to continue to be your best self despite the environment you happen to be in at that time. And so using that in the Marine Corps, and then using that to overcome adversity and go on meritorious boards and strive to be a better Marine and a better self, definitely helped me out.
I love that. Man, listen, I love hearing, and it's one of my favorite quotes, grow where you're planted, right? Because a lot of times we're always thinking about just, something down the road. I mean, one day I will do fill in the blank. And as opposed to just kind of being in the moment and being where you are and making the most of it at this place. So speaking of, how long have you been here in Northwest Arkansas?
So we moved to Northwest Arkansas around 2021-ish timeframe. So we've been here around 3 years or so.
Okay. So you feel like you've been able to grow where you're planted here?
Absolutely. So we've definitely, my spouse and I originally moved here for educational purposes. She attends the new medical school in Fort Smith. And so I started attending the University of Arkansas for mechanical engineering. So we were going to gain something from our experience here no matter what. And then outside of that, try to thrive as much as possible when it comes to taking advantage of the greenways and going to, eat around town as well, exploring some of the food options and things like that as well.
What did you know about Northwest Arkansas before you moved here?
It was definitely the exponentially growing and booming business community. There were several different institutions that my spouse was accepted to when she applied to medical school. And we kind of surveyed our options and saw that Northwest Arkansas, there wasn't really many places. There's, of course, like Silicon Valley, that they birth unicorn startups, but Northwest Arkansas itself is a unicorn for startups, if that makes sense. Not to butter up the area too much, but it seems like despite the area's potentially like the history of the area that people can definitely get from it, there is change that's happening in the area, and we wanted to at least give it a chance and see what it was like on the ground before we just had assumptions, and we can really take advantage of that growth that's taking place organically here.
Absolutely. No, I mean, listen, that's a commercial right there for Northwest Arkansas. You're absolutely right about that. And I've seen it for the last 10 years. So you've been here for 3 years. I've been here for 10, and I'm a transplant just like you. And what I've been blown away by is the friendliness of people here. I say it all the time on the podcast. Especially if you're starting a business, people will want to see you succeed and be successful. You don't have people kind of like jealous of whatever you're working on. I mean, what you're working on is for you, right? What I'm working on is for me. And I think people here in Northwest Arkansas tend to champion the little guy, a little gal that is trying to get something off the ground. And I think there's something special about that. Yeah,
I was actually very surprised by that, because you would know about Walmart and JB Hunt and Tyson and all the other Fortune 1, Fortune 500 companies, but you wouldn't think that there'd be such a booming startup ecosystem. And then for someone in my position to have such a proprietarily sacred idea, I was worried about sharing that at organizations like 1 Million Cups and things like that, but the community was very helpful, and they definitely gave me the sense of security that my ideas were going to be protected and empowered. So the people at Startup Junkies and 1 Million Cups have definitely been like super beneficial in the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah. Listen, because I mean, people are listening to this that are from here and they don't understand. I mean, you're from the East Coast. I'm from the Northeast. Back in the day when I would be in places, people would be like, hey, I need you to sign an NDA in order for me to tell you what I'm working on. And it's like, it's really not that serious, but in certain marketplaces and certain climates, it's a little different. But here it's not. People are like, hey, that's Daizhan's deal. That's what he's working on. Let's cheer him on.
And it is very difficult just to be, I guess, open to every potential business owner out there that may come to any area, that you should definitely protect yourself when it comes to intellectual property.
Absolutely.
And there are people who definitely want you to have NDAs for respect reasons, but there's other people who see, like you're saying, 50, 90 NDAs per day, and they just want to see the idea so they can move on. They don't care about spending their idea to make your company. They just want to know what you have going on to see if it's actually worth their time. And so a lot of these people are organically trying to help. But with that being said, you should protect yourself as a business owner when it comes to intellectual property.
Well put, Daizhan. I like that. So tell me, I know recently you participated and won an award for the People's Choice for Best Business Pitch 2024. That was up in Bentonville, I believe.
Yes.
And I heard your pitch, which I'm going to try to link to. I thought it was excellent. It's funny because I literally this morning was at the Sam Walton College of Business. Every year they invite me back, which is a really nice thing. They invite me to speak to the first and second year students. This year, I taught a class on the role of routine. And then I taught a class on networking. And part of the networking class that we talked about with those students, shout out to the Sam Walton College of Business MBA program. But one of the things that we talked about was understanding your personal brand and being able to articulate your why and what your brand is all about. Because your brand, like Jeff Bezos said, your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. You know what I'm saying? And then I kind of followed that up with this whole idea or concept of, doing your elevator pitch, right? So being able to take your personal brand and comport it into an elevator pitch so that when you talk to people about who you are and what you do, it rolls off the tongue. It should always, your why, your personal brand should always roll off the tongue. You shouldn't be fumbling with it. There shouldn't be missteps when it comes to you sharing that, because that's probably the most intensely personal aspect of who you are, right? And you should have that down more than anything else. And, we talk about people and the companies they work for. You should know the mission, vision, values of a company and be able to recite some of that. But especially, and I was telling all these young MBA students, you need to have your personal brand down pat. And it sounds like you have it down pat. And I listened to your pitch and it was 60 seconds. It was perfect. And I didn't really have a lot of questions at the end of the pitch. And I love the way you framed it. You told a quick story. You kind of walked people through what the SAM does and why it should matter. And you genuinely had me curious to know more, right? And that's the idea. When you give a pitch like that, it's like, man, I want to hear more. A lot of pitches you get, you're like, man, wake me up when this thing is over. Yours was really engaging. And more importantly, I mean, it was just 60 seconds. It was well polished and well put together. So first of all, I wanted to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
But secondly, I wanted you to kind of talk about how, what went into you developing your pitch and being able to kind of fine tune your brand around that.
Yeah. So thank you, first of all, for the congratulations. The Northwest Arkansas community, the people at Honor Fest, Idea Fame Startup Junkie have definitely went a long way when it comes to developing this business. And I think also inside of that, developing the pitch and the brand awareness, it's all tied into a sense of being comfortable with yourself. And so you're really not going to be able to organically promote any product that you're trying to promote if you don't love what you're doing. If you're just doing it because you want to be in business or you want to sell a thing or something, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You definitely have to want to do what you're doing. And then from that, people are going to see the organic you come through. And people may stumble on words because we're humans and we're trying to learn each other's language and use the same dialect and colloquial speech. So we may not necessarily use the same business vernacular. But I think when it comes to developing that personal brand, people can tell why you're there. And they can see if a person is just trying to sell something to make money, or if this is their 19th startup and they're just trying to get themselves out of debt, or if people are trying to solve a problem. And I think that people, at least from the sense that I've gotten, I've resonated with people who appreciate that I'm trying to solve a problem. And I think that those conversations are much more productive, if that makes sense. And so,
it makes 100% sense. I mean, I think of it, I always tell people, and for me, it's real easy. This podcast is the one that I would have wanted when I moved here in 2014, but it didn't exist. In 2019, I created it. And in the process of creating this platform to talk about why Northwest Arkansas is such a special place, to focus on the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here, something special came out of it. And I was blessed with the opportunity to create a platform that I have now shared with a lot of people, yourself included.
Thanks for making this.
Yeah, and absolutely. And that's part of my why, right? Because I love storytelling. I love hearing people's testimony. I love hearing the challenges that they overcome to do the things that they feel called to do. I think it's important. I think we need to talk more about it because there's so much bad news out in the world. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't need any more bad news. I want some good news. That's why listening to your story, that's good news for me, because if this thing comes off the way that you're hoping it does, I can see a natural disaster, heaven forbid it happening. It's going to happen because it's just the way the world is, that you guys will be at the forefront. Renewed Robotics will be at the forefront and on the ground as you're, helping to restore that community back to its original condition, right? And so I think it's exciting, man, to see that and to have something like that being born right here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? So I know you probably thought when the tornado happened in Rogers, you were like, man, I wish I had 50 SAMs to put up right now because one of my friends, their house was almost totally destroyed.
Yeah, we're currently building prototypes right now of the device. And so we're not actually at a manufacturing scale right now. But yeah, every time that I am made aware or I am aware of anything that happens on Earth that devastates communities in a negative way, I definitely wish that the SAM was already in production and we can just ship off 16 or 20 of them so everyone who lost a home can at least have somewhere to sleep that night and the burden isn't as bad. Now you don't have to lose everything and sleep on the ground or sleep in a community shelter. Now you can actually have somewhere safe and secure to sleep that evening. That would be I would definitely like to be able to think I could tuck myself better in at night knowing I did something to make a difference.
Absolutely. So speaking of the prototypes and what you've been putting together, is there a physical one that people can see?
So there is one that we have manufactured that people can see, you can interact with. So unfortunately, that prototype isn't a deployable prototype yet. That isn't something that's it's not gonna secure its own foundation yet, and it's not something that we can ship to your backyard. This is something that we have all the collaborators in place and we have all the team ready to build it. But we have our first pre-seed funding round scheduled for this October. So we just don't necessarily have the resources right now to pay all those people to build these prototypes in this manufacturing line. Okay. So we're building right now, and you can place a pre-order right now at renewedrobotics.com for $50. So we would love to fulfill that order for you once we are able to manufacture these. But right now we're still prototyping and in beta testing.
Yeah, and I saw that you were doing that pre-order, and it was kind of a way to get people involved in investing in this program. What, like, if somebody's like, I want to invest more than $50, what does that look like? How are you raising money in the initial seed round to get investors?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for opening that window, by the way. There's a few different avenues to support us. So we have a GoFundMe available right now. We're building a prototype, and right now it only is going to cost us around $50,000 or so to finish this one. You can go to GoFundMe and help us complete that prototype. We also, again, placing a pre-order is just more of a promise that you are going to purchase the SAM later on. So that's more of a placeholder. And with that pre-order, you're also going to receive a referral code for your SAM. So that way you can order and save on discounts when you receive your device. So once you place your pre-order, you'll receive a referral code, and you can share that with other members in your community to then order a SAM. And that would help benefit the company, because then that would then generate more audience for us. Yeah. And lastly, we're having a pre-seed funding round this October. And so if there's anyone who's interested from a venture capital perspective, or if they have deeper pockets than that, then you can feel free to contact me. We're on all the major social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, etc. You can reach out to me, and we're going to be holding that pre-seed funding round this October. If anyone has any questions, I would definitely be happy to reach back out to you.
Yeah, and that's October 24 at the time that we're recording this. And so certainly, if you're listening to this after that, I'm sure Daizhan will take your money if you're willing to invest in what he's doing. So it doesn't stop in October. That's one program that they're doing.
Yeah, and that's going to be our pre-seed funding round. So we are likely to have a Series A or a Series A and a Series B funding round later on. Yeah. But as we're gaining awareness, this is more of we've built up a community and network here in Northwest Arkansas. As well, we've presented at Automate in Chicago and at the Northwest Arkansas Technology Summit. And so these are going to be a chance to give bank owners as well as other local investors a chance to get into an early startup founded here in Northwest Arkansas that they know of. And then later on, as we do gain that publicity and we are able to reach a larger audience, we'll have a Series A funding round as well. We'll be able to raise much more capital because we have a larger audience.
Yeah. Well, listen, I hope somebody that listens to this podcast on a regular basis hears this episode and reaches out to you, and says, hey, we want to help. And we'll make sure that we put in the show notes all of your contact information, all of your social media channels, so that everybody knows how to get in touch with Daizhan and Renewed Robotics. Yeah, because I'm excited about what the potential can be. I'd be curious to know, have you had a chance to kind of look at like the landed cost for one of these units, and eventually, like, based on the scale of the operation and how much you're able to build, what you ultimately get the cost down to, based on the fact that you're building a large quantity of them as opposed to just one or two? Because we know at the onset, it's going to be expensive.
Correct.
But you want to get it down to a point where it's like, yeah, this makes total sense.
Yes. So we currently have a full bill of materials, both for the humanitarian and for the commercial variant of the SAM. Okay. The humanitarian version, which is slightly smaller, is going to cost the orderer, which would be like a state government or a hospital, something like that, around $50,000. And then the commercial version, which would be for, luxury glamping ADU purposes, is going to be around $95,000. Okay. With economies of scale, we would like to bring both of these prices down, but we would like to mass produce them lower than the price of a traditional ADU or tiny home when you factor in all the separate steps. So a lot of people think that tiny homes right now cost $10,000 or $30,000, but then when you bring in the electricity and you bring in the water and you secure it to the foundation, and then you want to actually get that tied into your pre-existing structure, it's going to cost you well over $100,000. So we're consolidating all of that together and making it cheaper. And then eventually we would like to make that, again, even cheaper, but that would come with economies of scale.
So, and this will be my last technical question because, I mean, again, I'm not an engineer and I don't play one on TV, but I'd be curious to know how or what type of mechanism would allow you to secure a device like this to the ground to the point where it's not going to blow away or anything like that.
So a lot of buildings right now, actually all buildings that are under 500 square feet aren't required to have any type of solid foundation fixed right now.
Okay.
And so right now what a lot of companies are doing are they're pouring a makeshift foundation hastily before the building gets there.
Yep.
And the same, what we have done as an alternative is placed an earth auger or almost like a fence post digger in each corner. So now this device can secure you about 3 to 4.5 feet into the ground. And then that same foundation that secures you into the ground can then later on be extracted so you can relocate the same as well.
Oh, I love it. It's funny. That's kind of in my head. I kind of had an auger type of item in my head as to what you would probably use, something that would kind of till down into the soil and then firmly implant itself.
Correct. And there's going to be bearings as well in there. So that way we can tolerate like high vibrations from the earth if there's seismic activity like an earthquake. Now, if there's reverberations, your foundation can absorb those shocks as well. Wow. So we'd like to make them earth-proof ideally so we can then take those learned experiences off of earth later on.
Man, Daizhan, dude, this is amazing, man. I'm more excited for the simple fact that you guys could be huge in a couple of years. And I can be like, I had this guy on my podcast back in the day before he hit it big, you know. So hopefully you don't forget about us little people, man, once you get it going. But listen, first of all, I just want to thank you for taking the time to share your dream with us. And actually, it's more than a dream. I mean, this has come to fruition now for you. And it's like, it's real. So you must feel the tangible nature of this, what was once an idea coming to life, like right before your eyes. What does that feel like to you? Yeah,
so I actually got to relive that experience the other day when we won the People's Choice Award at the Bentonville Honor Fest startup pitch competition.
And you guys won $1,000.
Yes, we won $1,000. And
congratulations.
So that's what the realization feels like. It's actually having an idea and then receiving the first dollar for it, having someone outside of the walls of your brain saying that this is a valid idea and here's my US currency that's valid for trading here, like giving you real money for it is a very fulfilling sense of, wow, this is actually something that's taking place and not just my mom's proud of me type deal.
Exactly.
And so I think that's really what's really fulfilling. And then outside of that, once we're able to start delivering these devices, that's something that I'm really looking forward to, is not necessarily anyone needing these devices, but the lack of need once these are delivered is what I'm really looking forward to.
Okay. I love it. What's the website?
renewedrobotics.com. And you can pre-order one right now for $50.
For $50, you can pre-order a SAM from renewedrobotics.com. And if people want to connect with you, you're on LinkedIn, right?
So we're on all the fun social medias, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram. I think we have a Reddit, but we're not super active, but all the Instagrams.
What about TikTok?
I'm a millennial. I'm not good with the TikToks yet. I'm learning how to use it, but I'm trying. I'm learning. But.
You may have to. I mean, eventually when you have all of these, because to me, what you're doing is a very visual thing. Mm-hmm. Like I'd want to see it, right? And so I think of several iterations of videos would be hugely beneficial and valuable to the public in terms of getting their head around this whole concept of what you're doing at Renewed Robotics. But I think it's exciting, man. So I'm firmly in your corner. I will be rooting for your success. And so I'm so glad that you and your wife decided to take up roots here in Northwest Arkansas and make a go at it. So I wish you nothing but success. And I really do hope that our listening audience, those of you that hear this, if this really resonates with you, please reach out to Daizhan, connect with him on LinkedIn, go visit the website, renewedrobotics.com. Check them out, see what they're doing, and support them in any way that you can. Because sometimes we just need an encouraging word, just to be like, hey, way to go, man. Keep going. I love what you're doing. So
donation wouldn't hurt though.
Yeah, no, donation. That's right. That's right. A couple of greenbacks would be good too. So we'll take that. But Daizhan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really, really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you for building this for our community. And thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate every second of it.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. We really appreciate it. To learn more about what we're doing, check us out at iamnorthwestarkansas.com. Remember, you can listen to our podcast on every major podcasting platform. You can donate to us. There's all kinds of options that you have when it comes to checking out our show notes, learning more about our guests. And we have more than 300 episodes at iamnorthwestarkansas.com. So no matter what, we have amazing entrepreneurs like Daizhan that was just on, as well as so many others, amazing chefs, just amazing people that have come here and decided to call Northwest Arkansas home. So if you are new to the area or if you're thinking about relocating here, I want to encourage you to seriously consider doing it. You could do a lot worse. Northwest Arkansas is legit, and it's a great place to call home. And we're one of the fastest growing MSAs in the country for a reason. So I do hope that you come here. And as always, hit me up if you ever have any questions. I answer questions once a week from people that are thinking about relocating here, and I'm more than happy to do it for you. That's all I have for this week. We have another great episode for you next week. And remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.